let's get back to the point. So, what prerequisites do you agree to? Preconditional prerequisites. I could argue a lot of this. These just say standard logic, right? But we mostly argue upon like a lot of fallacies that has like a whole identifications towards these fallacies. So we need paradoxical or orthodoxical laws, types of these retardation or ontological values towards its argumentations in hand. For example, let's argue a prima facie towards Elias paradox. Where are you gonna argue upon this form contradiction or form existence towards
that is just a positive ontological property.
Of what?
Like what you just said, like that is the parts of basis of ontological properties.
No, like I'm basing this paradoxical law in question. We're trying to argue on fucking prima facie, so I don't know how that's logical values towards that. Although what I'm trying to argue is the ontological value or this objective value in question towards the existence of these commitments or displacements or displacements on question. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Damn, that was really good. Okay, that was some real yapping. Anyways, my position is, I'm presupposing we already agreed on the set of prerequisites. Yes or no? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. My position is that Gohan outscales your character, which would be the conclusion that he wins. What's your premise?
Premise is Saber wins due to the quality of her state.
Okay, quality of her state. You wanna scale first?
You asserted yours first, so you can go ahead and scale first.
Okay, fine, sure. Wait, yeah, never mind. I'll just scale first. Shit. Oh my god, so many scans. Oh, don't worry, bruh. I will reach this level tiering soon. I have. Holy shit. This works. And I'm gonna get some lot of yapping. Okay, so okay.
By the way, since we agree to those prerequisites by the logical properties we can be using, we can just define the direction to relative equivalence of their corresponding physical properties. So that's abiding by the prerequisites.
About plus physical properties.
No, I said logical properties that define the direction of relative equivalence of their corresponding physical properties. That's what we abide by the main prerequisites. We just set it up.
Relative physicality. Are you arguing based on our characters? With a relative equal stats or whatever?
Not never forget it. It's just it's complicated to understand. Where are you gonna send it?
Let's just fuck this. I'll just send the chat dimension.
We'll just make a scan of the channel or something.
Oh,
hey bro, by the way, I lost to Flixie yesterday again.
Of the baiting?
I lost to Flixie yesterday again.
On the baiting, right?
Yeah.
That's sad for you. Holy shit.
So sad. That is a big anti-feat for me. That's
Why?
a big anti. Why?
Yeah.
First off, Flixie barely debates anymore. Second off, he's not even a high tier.
Obviously. I debated Flixie before. Like in my prime. I got judgment from everyone in that server. What the fuck? Hey yo, this is some wild shit for real, nigga. Oh my god. Anyways.
Yeah, hopefully my mic doesn't cut off at this time. Because I have massive voice cracks.
What happened?
Like most of the time I have like massive voice cracks. I'm gonna try to put my device on stereo so I can be louder.
Sure. Okay. Let me just hold up. Since we agreed on moderation, let me just mute you so I can scale my character, and then you can stay with the patients afterwards. Okay.
All right, sure.
All right, sure. Hold up. Okay, there it is. Hold up. Let me mute. Okay. Alright, let's stay with the argumentations in hand. Yeah, blah, yada yada yada. Okay, so the Dragon Ball cosmology, aka the Underworld, was stated to transcend the living universe as it views it as a lower existence, as they argued as an existence higher in its perspective, right? So if we argue based upon this, yeah, it will be placed upon up top and be stated to be transcendence. This will be a form of qualitative superiority to where living universe, which we can argue axiomatically that contains time and space. So if we do transcend this, and then we try to denote the fact that you stayed to lack the concept, that lack time and space, be separated by the X in this question. The X, our argument of being identity towards this, we identified X as time space. As the scan also stated, that the goal is to bring the Saiyan to separated by time space. That being X is time space, then if you're separated from time space itself, or from that X in question, then that this existence towards that will be the lacking of the properties in this, if we're arguing based on constructions. And the fact it also transcends this, then obviously it will be a form of separation. So if we argued upon the lack of dimensionalities, or the absence towards the existence in question, then if we conjunction this towards that, lack of dimensionality and transcendence over dimensionality, we can come to a logical consequential value to being out-reversal. Because, in other words, out-reversal is beyond all concepts of time and space, right? So it's not a dimensional construct, and the same way as a zero-dimensional thing that's dimensionless cannot be transcendent, cannot transcend higher dimensions, as its entire properties is literally just being inferior, infinitely inferior to higher dimensions, via the lack of dimensional spaces, blah blah blah. So again, it would be a contradiction for 0D construct to transcend something, right? But this outer world transcends this construction of space, of dimensionality, and yet lacks dimensionality. Then the only logical conclusion that we can draw upon here is it's out-reversal. Since the consequential value towards this is the conclusion that I'm basing off of this synthesis, or what I'm trying to argue, of this identical identifications towards the scaling in question. So yeah, and I argue Goku scales to this, and yet Goku scales to Gohan. Gohan scales to Goku, and then Gohan would also scale to out-reversal. Any contentions? My turn to mute. You can update yourself.
Alright, so let me bring up the fact with this. Since you claim that it's above all concepts of space and time, let me go with the time progress here. As you can see, that time by definition is something that is indefinite and continues the progress of existence, which correlates to events of the past, present, future, regarded as a whole, basically. So, for example, we can experience change, such as, I'm moving my hand right here and I touch something that has changed between progress. For example, 1, 2, 3 seconds pass by, events occur in multiple other places of time itself. Right, and we can conclude this via that Goku or Gohan will be bounded by time, via he can experience change. As the fight scene here, anyone can experience change, and yeah, if they didn't experience change, for example, they wouldn't be able to move, they wouldn't be able to get hurt, they wouldn't be able to experience all of these things. It wouldn't really make sense. That would be a main contradiction, and for this to lack dimensionality, it wouldn't really make sense that they would be moving in the space without dimensionality. First off, I can give this analogy. You have time and matter but no space, so where would you put it, right? But if you have space and matter but no time, when would you put it? That is the difference between it. If you just have space and time but no matter, where is it exactly? So it wouldn't really make sense for this. So what I believe it's a contradiction that being above dimensionality, but being able to regress on these correlated events. For example, I can give this analogy from a cosmological argument on, where is it? Give me a second. I have it right here. It says here, you can see by this, it's basically the argument of an impossibility of an actual infinite. By this, it says it infinitely expands in the universe as a living whole, right? And by this, it would be basically going beyond all limits of space, time, and dimensionality. So I can give this argument. Premise 1, an actual infinite cannot exist. Premise 2, an infinite temporal regressive events of it is an actual infinite. Therefore, we can conclude that an infinite temporal regressive events cannot exist. So by this, I believe it would just be a contradiction for them to be beyond all concepts of space and time and dimensionality. Why they can experience change and no actual infinite cannot exist, via with the cosmology stating that it's above all limitations. And basically by all limitations, I know it's not stating that, but we can argue this above all limitations considering it's above the main concept of space and time, which would be above it as a whole. So it's still arguable that it's above all limitations, which basically means it's above its main infinite and by the last scan staying in the infinite expanding universe, and that the DBZ universe is infinite. Therefore, I believe all this is a contradiction, and I don't believe they would be beyond space-time dimensionality or have a real infinite existing in the cosmology. There's my refute. You can go ahead with your refute.
Alright. There's some real yapping there. anyways, back to the main argumentations in hand towards what you just gave. One of your main refutations was the transcendence over this and the lack of time and space. And then how do I say this? What are the arguments you gave? Alright, infinity cannot be surpassed. Oh yeah, sure. Anyways, let's back to the main argumentations in hand first. So let's just go with the not time space thing, which you're trying to argue some without the matter, blah blah blah, and like towards what I was trying to point out here. If infinity as a whole with these constructions in hand, towards this infinity in question, where you say it's a form limitless, where with the premises of the syllogical argument you gave, I'll just give like some sort of like indications towards this thing in question with the connotative description of other words. Anyways, let's get this. No, I said an actual infinite cannot exist. Okay, sure. Well, you like trying to argue based upon that. I'll just argue against it. So infinity as a whole, again, we argue is limitless, right? Well, in this entire construction in question, you can argue infinity as a whole will be bounded towards dimensionality. If you are within that case, if you're like infinitely, like you have limitless thing and you're still within that same type of plane, you can still limit that into infinity in question to where it is actually in form existence in like ontological values. So let's go upon this orthodox argumentations in hand with column arguments. So the cause of infinity being again limitless, right? So if we limit that construction equation to be three-dimensional and the higher sum in 4 to 101 being like higher dimensionality being 4, let's say like 4D and 3D is like what we argue infinite 3D, right? 4D being above that as a whole. So if we're gonna base it off those syllogistical arguments in question, then this infinity in question would be again can be existence, but there's also a valid interpretation as to why it can exist. As it can exist and yet still have some sort of inferiority towards this construction in question based upon its ontological value upon its existence in the synthesis as a whole. Anyways, for the third part, the logical contradictions when you're basing off cause in this argument in question, I'll base off this cause in question to be a higher form logical framework as what it is, I just argue is universal. As an universal thing is a form of construction that's within fiction that we based upon, like, beyond every concept time and space. That we have a logical conclusion or the synthesis or consequential value towards this is that it's actually like, how do I say this? Alright, like it has some form of laws that's within it, like a higher logical framework than our external reality, which is limited towards this physical, like this thing or sets of physics, which is like dimensionality as a whole, right? So if these laws in question can't correspond to this specific cosmological construction that we argue as universal, then there's a logical conclusion that this causality in question would be a higher form of causality, a logical framework of causality. In this type of sense, it would not necessarily be a contradiction as a whole. If this argument begins in cause of the other world or these characters in question, and then these characters in question scaling to universal, then again, as we forward laws towards this laws in question, towards the concepts of these scaling, then we go off syllogical problems with this argumentation in hand, then yes, this would be, again, not bounded by, let's say, temporality frameworks of causality would be a higher construction of these ontological values. Therefore, yes, again, I got the point. Anyways, so with that being in mind, with the argumentations in hand, with the supportance of syllogism here, so Otherworld is universal, Goku scales to it, Gohan scales to it, and basing off chances over infinity. And you also said like this other argument with a DBZ universe being infinitely expansive, right? You say it cannot exist logically. If again, I just refuted that, so I don't think that would matter here. So we got argue alleged certainty via the some form of conclusion that you agree with your consequential value, and via also that with via like Russell's teapot. Let's say Russell's teapot is the fact that like. Okay, let me test this out. Russell's teapot basically is what I make, specifically the argumentations towards this, then it would be the remedies of the burden of proof, right? So if you're gonna make that this claim question, any of this would not like indicate of constructions, blah blah blah, any of that, right? Russell's teapot would reminisce that you have the burden via the fact that this existence in question will be you try to disprove this claim in question with the existence of water if you just search off what Russell's teapot is. And what you can conjunction Russell's teapot to reductio ad absurdum. Reductio ad absurdum with reductio ad impossibile. Reductio ad absurdum, you can also combine this with perfectio omnibus as olli polyzibus. If you don't know what all of these I mentioned, I'll just conjunction towards that what reductio ad absurdum is. Reductio ad absurdum is making an opposition claim that we argue is form contradictory, therefore the opposition claim cannot have a form, truth value, or ontological value to what its truth existence is, right? So, yeah, via that is reductio ad impossibile, then you're arguing all of these things you just argue, I argue a form contradiction cannot exist. Since I just, again, explained all of these things you said to be a form of contradiction to all this point, reductio ad impossibile, you cannot define, or like you cannot defend this stance, then yeah, I'll just argue a concession towards that point. The same way as perfectio omnibus, as if polybius. This entire point would be perfections towards this claim in question with the support's evidence. Anyways, that's all I get to say. You can continue now.
So those were massive arguments there, and I believe I can do one at a time. So I'll go with the first argument you had of infinity. So by the argument I gave, I know you already proved that, but I will go with the second argument that follows with that argument of what I said. So again, it will be an argument from the impossibility of the formation by a successive addition. So again, argument from the impossibility of the formation of an actual infinite by successive addition. The argument may be simply formulated as follows, so I can just give three more claims with two premises and one concluding, and I'll give the other argument that follows with that. So premise one, a collection formed by successive addition cannot be an actual infinite. The temporal series of events is a collection formed by successive addition. Therefore, the temporal series of events cannot be an actual infinite. Again, by this follows with the argument that no actual infinite cannot be followed via, it can be by many things. One, you cannot theorize infinite completely, nor can you perceive it completely. And by the second philosophical argument I just gave, this argument is independent of the foregoing argument, for its conclusion is not incompatible with the existence of an actual infinite. It rather denies that a collection containing an actually infinite number of things can be formed by adding one member after another. If an actual infinite cannot be formed by successive addition, then the series of past infinites or past events must be finite, since that series is formed by successive addition of one event after another in time. Right? And now, since I already had over that claim, or over the argument you just made, I'll go with the dimensionality stuff right there. The causes of time, you said that there is a higher form of cause, which I don't believe, right there. Causes, as you can see, cause and events, by definition, is basically something, hold on, let me get it right here. Basically, cause and effects refers to the relationship of events or actions where one event, and the cause leads to another event. So it can be like a chain reaction of things, this happening, like, at this moment in time, there will be a cause where, like, the president gets assassinated. So by higher cause of definition, I don't get what you mean. And by higher dimensional stuff, where you said about 4D, spirit to 3D, with something, because I, of course, know, we, of course, have knowledge that we cannot perceive, we cannot comprehend what a four-dimensional object looks like, or what a four-dimensional being looks like. Considering four-dimensional beings in a four-dimensional dimension, universe, or space is ineffable to us. It cannot be comprehended by any other sort of language by that time. And I can give this argument. For example, I know it's a kind of a dead argument, but I can say this. For example, by the movement of this, if they were beyond space and time, it wouldn't really make sense for them to change a position. For changing positions, it would need to be in space. And you might be like, oh, you just made a claim, you said, oh, I can change a position of sorts. Well, as you can see, in fight scenes, or basically the scans he showed, they are in a position or place in space, as you can see. So by here, the motion definition is motion, movement, or movement in change of space. So what we can conclude, if they were beyond dimensionality, they wouldn't be beyond any sort of kind of space. So again, that's why I believe that they aren't beyond dimensionality. And what you said about dimensionality being beyond actual infinites would only be, dimensionality, or like infinite size, infinite comparison, infinite measurements beyond these infinite measurements. And this is why I believe it's a contradiction to go beyond dimensionality and space-time as a whole, as it's beyond its main limitations, and since beyond its main limitations, right, it would basically be beyond infinite measurements. And considering dimensionality is measurements, you can go with an infinite regress of how much you can go, one number after the other. So that's why I believe that, after all, I really give the argument that an actual infinite cannot exist. Therefore, it wouldn't be possible to go beyond dimensionality via, it wouldn't make sense for them to go beyond the infinite. Considering if an actual infinite cannot exist, you cannot surpass infinite in the first place. And by the analogy you just gave, I can agree with this, as if, I already have knowledge about this. Considering Russell specifically applied his analogy in the context of religion. So it's about a theological standpoint. Well, our argument is on philosophical lack of burden. Well, I wouldn't really say lack of burden, but more of a Socratic form of arguments we have onto our main positions of what we said about it. So again, this is my refute your claim, and you can give the objection to me.
Okay. No, that was some good yapping, but I really don't think some of them really just refute any what I just said. But anyways, let's just get to the main point. So you said that infinity, what we argue, is like a set of like numbers that goes endlessly. Is that correct? And then you just argue that these numbers going on and on and on would like not be an infinite measurement. Yes or no? You can just type it out. I need some clarifications towards that claim you made.
No, I never said that, one number after the other and going infinitely. I never said that it isn't an infinite. Again, I will do it again. I don't know why I have so much good memory, but I can say it again.
No, you don't need to say it again. You just give some clarifications. Anyways, yeah, sure, you can just mute yourself now. Anyways, okay, so we basing off these infinities equation, which what you argue is like a contradiction. I just argue ontological values towards what you describe or what identified as infinity, being non-existential towards this axiomatic indication. So what I argue with it, why it would debunk your points with the syllogistical in hand with what you just give, is the fact that while you just argue, I'll just give like how do I say this, a form of identity indiscriminable. If you don't know what identity indiscriminable is, and what the properties between these things can in ontologically exist. So if we have to give it a properties, well, we argue is dimensionalities, right? If these dimensionalities in question being higher dimensionality, being beyond our own comprehension, which will be infinitely above of these measurements towards this in question. When we did these properties being the same way as the properties of infinite, that we just argue x being the dimensionality, x would be that, and then y would be the infinity equation. We correspond this in x and y equation to be ontological values towards this consequential value or the argumentations based off that. So let's say x, right? Again, x isn't I-dimensional, and then we have the properties that x has the same ways as properties as y, and then y has these things in question. Then obviously we would just argue the form of infinity or this infinite in question will have a form of existence towards this all of the. Alright, so within that existence towards in question, within this existence beyond that, that would indicate infinity has a form of like existence towards it. Via the conjunction towards what I gave would be x and y would be the ontological or the analogical argument that I gave. Anyways, for the second part, when you said a higher form of cause, you didn't necessarily refute it. You just gave a definition of a cause, what it is, ontological values, and what a cause really is. I'm basing off what this cause in question is. Because this cause in question is where I argue, again, a higher form of plane that exists in a higher form of plane, and there's a laws that within that higher form of plane, right? So within this in question, again, perfectio omnibus al possilibius. That would be formed as perfection towards something that's with omnipotence or something that's the absolute authority of a power. So these things in question, of these powers in question, infinitely above what we argue as time and space, all of these things as a whole, if we just argue, or like let's say a hypothetical sense that universal is the form of the construction of the words that, again, the logical conclusion that we can draw here is that how do I say this? Oh yeah, the logical conclusion that we can draw here is that this law in question that we argue is conjunction towards causality is not a form of causality that we argue is in our external reality, as again it's our reversal type of law, which I don't really think you refute. You just kind of just gave a definition of causality and just based off this type of event or some form of change or some form of finding or something, which doesn't really refute with the existence towards what this causality is happening in question, which is again in a higher plane of existence. This higher plane of existence in question comprised of being beyond our actual concepts of time and space. So I'll just bring that up, and I'll just dismiss that via the fact that invisible ignorance and non sequitur with the definitive of alleged certainty with that thing in question that supports this argumentation in the hand via that. And yeah, anyways, for the Russell's teapot argument which you gave, Russell's teapot with you baseline is like this Russell in question you're arguing is from religions, right? Well, I'm arguing based off Russell's teapot. An example of Russell's teapot is if I say that there's a teapot in the in fucking space, right? So yeah, if I say there's a teapot I saw in fucking space, and I say like, hey, yo, I saw this teapot in fucking space, and they're gonna say, yo, prove that, and you said no, I don't need to, because no one can disprove it. That's what a form of Russell's teapot is, with the remedies of the burden of proof, which we argue up is not. So if I say the disclaim in question, which I supported, then it would be on you, since you never really just gave like some form of evidence to unsupported this thing. Russell's teapot is what it is, but therefore the burden within you to try to disprove the argumentations in question. In the fucking space. Yo, anyways, back to main point, back to the second one. Anyways, third one. So let me go with the third one. Hold on, calm down. I'm literally forgetting some of his points. Anyways, the third one. You didn't necessarily refute the things that I put, like the argue, which is like reductio ad absurdum, reductio ad impossible, and probatio diabolica, which I conjunction towards omnibius ali possibilius, which what I gave arguments earlier, being perfection as a whole, and reduction ad absurdum not being me my burden, with reduction ad absurdum being defined and given as an actual description earlier. So within that argumentation and add with the supportance with this, then yes, obviously. So you didn't necessarily refute this, you didn't even mention these things in question, which reductio ad absurdum, omnibius ali possibilius, reductio ad impossibilis, and legislative, not secular, all these Russell's teapot argument I gave you, it's kind of a conjunction towards all of them, meaning if you didn't necessarily refute this, then you didn't actually give an actual refutation towards the scale though. So, I mean, everyone should know this. Matter of fact, if I give some testifications here, I'll ask everyone, did he or did he not mention what I gave earlier when I mentioned perfectio omnibius ad possibilius and how do I say this? Reductio ad absurdum. Did he mention this? Yes or no? Testifications, please. Chat this on chat dimension. Anyone who's been fucking competent enough to listen obviously has an answer. Go ahead, niggers. Answer by nigga, holy shit. Bro, motherfuckers are not listening, holy shit. Anyways, I'm waiting. This testification to support my arguments. Yeah.
What's happening?
Fuck off, Gray. You, oh my god, shut up, nigga. Yeah, it's a debate. So, let's go see. Holy shit, nobody is going to type that out. Why? Are you all niggas not listening? What the fuck? Anyways, you niggas did not listen? Oh, okay, that's kind of sad at this point. But anyways, we can go based on recording later. So again, he didn't necessarily mention all. He didn't necessarily debunk all of this thing I put into question. I placed on him, which is omnibius ali possibilius, obviously, and reductio ad absurdum. I gave all of these argumentations towards it. I placed it on him. He didn't necessarily like mention, nor did he even refuted this thing in question. So with these things I just placed on him, it has some form of values towards it, because it's actually pointing out the form of falsity contradiction to his stance in question. And again, he didn't refute this, so I don't think I think this will be conjunction to my whole argument that he won't necessarily be refuting all of these in question. Anyways, yes, MTFleader, you can go ahead and speak your point.
Let me find a logical argument I can give, because that was a long one. So by what you said on the actual infinite, on how, higher causes can exist, and how higher infinites, or basically infinites, can exist between higher planes, well, that's just going by that these higher planes are basically ineffable to us, considering we cannot comprehend them. Therefore, we value them as they are infinitely beyond us, right? But if we hypothetically actually take a perspective into the fourth dimension, then we can just see that there would really be no infinite. Now, I'm not just presupposing this, considering the claims I already have of the actual infinite argument are already abiding by this. The infinites, or the infinite argument you gave, is by a cosmological argument, or a physical cosmological argument. The arguments I gave for an actual infinite is a cosmological argument that is on a philosophical standpoint, or from philosophical works. So I can say this, right? So I'm a two-dimensional being, and I cannot comprehend or perceive a three-dimensional world. Therefore, I can will not comprehend it, but I can say that it is infinitely beyond us, considering it's beyond our leagues. Those things, we are ineffable to them. We cannot even comprehend them. Same as we, three-dimensional beings, cannot comprehend a four-dimensional being. We cannot even say what it is. If it was ineffable to us, we can't even call it ineffable, considering we cannot comprehend it by any other sort of a language or any other meaning. So again, that kind of contradicts your point. And going to higher causes or higher planes, I can just use the same exact argument. For example, again, I'm a two-dimensional being. Causes in a higher plane or causes in a three-dimensional plane, we cannot perceive it, because that, again, beyond our leagues of understanding, perception, comprehension, etc. Right? We cannot justify those. And again, as we can see, since I'm giving it from a three-dimensional standpoint, we can see that the causes that happen in the three-dimensional world, it's nothing special. It's something you would view as something normal, considering it's supposed to happen. It is the movement of time, and it's the movement of causality. And this would be in perspective of almost every word. Yes, you can call these higher planes. You can call these higher planes if you're a lower plane, if you're something inferior to these higher dimensions. Again, I can agree on that. And back again, yeah, these are the points that I believe why it kind of refutes the argument on the basis of your character scale or your scaling. And again, the reason I didn't give this or didn't propositionalize these logical arguments you gave me is because I didn't check, or I don't know, or it's either that I don't believe you gave a proper basis to why these things or these logical arguments would rather have effect on my main argument, but rather you just spawn these ontological properties. Again, I know most about Russell's teapot. Again, it's, as I said again, specifically applied into the context of religion. So again, even though religion and theology, they have a standpoint on philosophy, I don't believe this goes into my main argument, or my philosophical cosmological argument, which contains the main subphrase of what I meant by natural infinite not existing. Again, these arguments of Russell's teapot, these things you gave from me, these absolute possible perfection arguments you gave me, I don't believe you gave a proper basis to why you even said, or gave a main proposition on why you said that this would have effect on me mostly, which is why I didn't bring those things up. And again, I kind of forgot most of your other arguments there, but I believe you just continued on with the statements of those logical arguments you gave me. So again, by these points, you said what I said again, which is about the infinites and causes, which I believe is kind of going circular. So again, we can ask someone around here moderation on if who is inferior, if we are relative, on par, or if one is superior to the other or no. I can give multiple claims in here at this point, but I feel like it's kind of just out of context at that main point. So yeah, the arguments you gave following was about those things, the logical arguments of you saying that it is against me, and that the lack of burden is on me, and that I should justify most of these things, most of these claims, instead of going circular. And I believe it didn't have any proper basis on why it would affect me on the burden of proof. So again, this is just my claims. I feel like we are going circular, so you can just conjunction our conclusion right now. And if you bring up the XY thing again, of Y being higher dimensions or X being higher dimensions, I already agreed on that and I already focused on that analogy. So yeah, I can criticize by my philosophical point, but that would just be, again, mostly out of context, which would likely let me repeat what I said, which would likely be me getting more inferiority if I criticize my main point and criticize the main point of your usage on those logical arguments. So again, I can just abide by this point, and if you give a refutation that I would conjunction or justify, which would be circular and not really having any superiority or being inferior to me, then I believe we can just conclude on this point if you want now. I'm not forcing a conclusion, I'm not jumping to conclusions. I'm just asking if you want to go to conclusions. But again, this is just my main argument to your refutational point and my opposition to your point. So again, okay. I'll go on mute and you can go ahead with your refutation.
Yeah, okay, cool. We can go to conclusions. I mean, if you want me to refute it, sure, I'll refute it. But like,
no, I mean, it's just by your choice. It's just by your choice if you want to refute it or not. But again.
Okay, cool. Let's go to conclusion. Anyway, Hold up. Oh, okay, hold up. So,
Wait, let's ask. Wait. Before you go with your refutation, let's ask people for their conclusions first, and then you can go by your
I'm
refutation
pretty
if you
sure some
want.
of these niggas were not in here to fucking listen, or usually just admit that he was not even following. He literally just stayed in my DMs. What about you, Animosity? Were you listening?
I was sleeping, and I just randomly woke up to a bunch of noises. And everything
Okay.
going about.
And this nigga named Sen is literally just turning off his headphones. I'm pretty sure no one on this voice.
Yo, Warrior Z. I don't give a fuck.
Yo, so
Anyways, Warrior Z. So, I don't care if you said you didn't understand what just happened in the debate. Just give your conclusion on who you think genuinely won, even though you don't understand a single shit.
I can't give my conclusion if I don't know who won, bro.
Holy yeah.
Hey, hold on. I mean, Animosity was here the whole time. You guys can appeal to him.
He was sleeping,
Yeah,
bro.
that's
Bro, I was sleeping. I don't know. I just accidentally joined these.
Yeah, all the niggas were in here. Well, Avatar is like probably like very competent here. That I mean, he probably is listening. But anyways, since he was new here, he barely like understand a single thing that's going on. Since we did actually like we can testify for Avatar here. I will just give conclusions to Avatar here. So Avatar, I would like to say something from this entire argumentations that we had. So I made the claim that Dragon Ball, quote unquote, Otherworld, transcends like the dimensionalities from the living universe, and then I gave a conjunction towards that it lacks dimensional properties, and give a logical conclusion that this would be outerversal, since outerversal is not made of dimensional construct, yet be beyond dimensional construct, and 0D dimensional construct cannot transcend dimensions that are above it, since it's zero dimensional. So like I gave a logical conclusion, the otherworld is outerversal here, right? So let's see here. MTFleader tends to argue that infinity cannot exist, and I gave like a logical contradiction towards it, which he basically agreed. I said that with the X and Y analogy, he even agreed that it exists, right? So what my X and Y analogy was entailing is that dimensionality has infinite measurement, have like infinite superiority to the lower one. We view them as ineffable, right? So if we say X has properties of infinitely being above Y, then henceforth the properties of existence of infinity can indeed exist via identity indescribable. So if we just go based off identical solutions or variables that we conjunction towards this values of its objective existence, if dimensionality is infinitely above something, the keyword infinitely exists, then infinity has to exist, which is what I argue again. Identity indescribable. If you don't know what identity indescribable is, it's where a properties of something can indeed exist when the properties of something is contained. So if again X is infinitely above Y, then infinitely as a whole, which should exist, therefore infinity must exist. So I gave this argumentations towards him, and he agrees to that, and yet still argues that infinity should not exist based on his arguments earlier, and I gave like a logical contradiction towards that, and I don't really think he refuted all of that shit. Yeah, based off this, from that infinity as well, I gave like again an logical argument that necessarily just contradict what he just said. For the second part, we were arguing earlier whether or not like how do I say this, Russell's teapot having the burden and like any of these shits. Like I'm also arguing that he perfectio omnibius ali post alibius and reductio ad absurdum reductio ad impossible. I even refute this earlier. All of these three things I mentioned, I supported with argumentations, and I gave a description as to why it does abide in this dialectic. He then he said that he doesn't need to refute it. He doesn't know like about it, so he just argues that it doesn't necessarily help the dialectic at all. So it won't necessarily be it has some form of irrelevancy towards it has no proper basis to debunk my argument. That's what most of his argumentations was, but I like gave an explanation. I gave like a supponents that No, that is what you said though. You literally said these laws in question, blah blah blah. Anyways, so Avatar, I don't need to further extrapolate some. Oh yeah, I do have one thing to extrapolate though. He said like causality, the causality in Dragon Ball would basically be nothing of the other world, right? Because not because like it's not necessarily special whatsoever. It's because we just view it's ineffable, and we have a logical conclusion. It's like some form of external reality, what blah blah blah, or whatever it is. So he said all of these towards that other world question. You can even review this in the done recording. So yeah, with the with the other world thing, I like argue that this causality would not necessarily be that. That would be presupposing the evidence would not exist. That supposes it being outerversal and teleological beliefs should exist based off that. So yeah, what do you have to say based off this? He can give his conclusions. Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, most of what you just said, entailing by the debunk, or well, not debunk, but by your conclusion, I never said anything about, oh, I agree that this is why the infinite can exist. I never said that. I agree that you can use the analogy, and I agree that it would work by using the propositions of x, y, x being these lower dimensional things, y being these higher dimensional things, basically infinity being put together. And I only justify this via saying, you can just say, oh, it is infinitely beyond your comprehension because it is ineffable to you again. But this wouldn't really make sense considering, again, by this cosmological argument or by this philosophical argument we perceive and we theorize it is by the three-dimensional world that an actual infinite cannot exist. While we can agree that two-dimensional beings, again, that we are infinitely beyond two-dimensional beings. Considering by higher dimensional theories, it literally says this. If you were to put a two-dimensional being next to a three-dimensional being, or three-dimensional space, that three-dimensional space would regress onto infinite two-dimensional worlds. And by this philosophical argument, it is not saying that it is an actual argument of infinity existing. It is by saying that it is infinitely beyond our comprehension and that we just cannot comprehend it because we are ineffable to it. And by what he said of me saying, oh, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, I understood it very well by Russell's teapot being on the synthesis of how religion works onto theology, which doesn't subtract to my main point on it being a philosophical or cosmological argument. And by what he said, I'm pretty sure he was trying to say that I didn't say that, oh, it didn't have any relevance. I'm saying to prove that it had any lack of burden on me, or through the lack of burden, that how it would affect my entire argumentation, or how it would basically have superiority over me, and how this would conjunction to him having a better argument than me. That's what I said, and that's why I said that, this is why I didn't brought up those logical arguments on why he said that. That's what I basically said. And about those infinite saying stuff, I can agree to this. Again, an actual infinite cannot exist. And again, you can abide by these numbers, one number at a time, of what I said by my analogy of one number being put after another infinitely and infinitely. You can go by this dimensionality, and since I gave the argument of an actual infinite cannot be existing, you cannot surpass infinite. So to surpass the concepts of space, time, and dimensionality, you would need to be beyond all their limitations, which means you would need to be infinitely beyond them. And if you were infinitely beyond them, you would also surpass all categories of them, which would include their infinite regress. And again, this is why it is impossible, and I believe it's a contradiction, because again, you can use the law of non-contradiction. Again, P not P, or something cannot be true or false at the same time by those contradictions. Again, since I said that a contradiction cannot exist, not a contradiction cannot exist, since I said an infinite cannot exist, therefore you cannot surpass infinite itself. So there's my conclusion, debunking to his conclusion.
Conclusion debunking to his conclusion, that's wild. Anyways, Avatar, just based off what you heard, because most of the time, if you don't understand most of the context, I can probably just send in the recording, bro. Just fucking watch the recording. If you confused the entire thing and just gave some of this judgmental shit. I could also Booga, what's up? What happened to your fucking name, nigga? Also, bro.
I need to debate.
Ouch.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. I think I don't know. They may have like removed my display name or some bullcrap like that. I have no idea what happened.
Anyways, Avatar, who do you think was winning based off conclusions? Anyways, yeah. Booga, what happened to your name, my nigga?
I have no idea. I just went on the phone one day and I found out that like apparently my display name is gone. So I don't know.
Yo, Booga, I gotta tell you something. Yo, I got something to tell you as well. Also, I would like an announcement from all of you niggas. I myself. Yo, chill. Stop the real quick. MTFleader, we can probably continue this later because I also have to eat. But anyways, let me talk to Booga.
Okay, sure.
Booga,
Let's move on to the next point, like in a few hours, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. Anyways, okay, hold up, Booga. I would like to say something. I would like to announce to all the niggas. I have heavy amps from